Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Rivet Education's May Professional Learning Power Hour, where today we are going to be taking a deep dive into Rivet's annual market report, The Supply and Demand of Curriculum-Based Professional Learning. I'm Annie Morrison, one of the co-founders of Rivet Education. I'm so glad that you all are able to join us this morning as we take a look at the field of curriculum-based professional learning. So real quick, just wanted to start off with just kind of a brief overview of why we do this report annually. And the reason behind this is that we recognize as an organization and as a field that simply implementing high quality instruction materials and putting them in the hands of teachers is not enough. We know that the actual successful implementation of high quality instruction materials is a multi-year process, one that reflects the process that you see here on this screen. And within every single one of these phases, curriculum-based professional plays an essential role in assuring that both teachers and leaders are maximizing the full benefits of their curricula. And so we produced this report to really illuminate what is happening in the field regarding curriculum-based professional learning, to illuminate needs that can be provided by state agencies, funders, professional learning organizations, and other support organizations like Rivet. So at Rivet, we define curriculum-based professional learning as professional learning that is specific to educators' contexts. It is focused and really centered around equity for students. It is both content focused and high quality instruction materials aligned. It's data driven. It addresses expectations and the motivations of teachers. And also it's just interactive and collaborative to make sure that teachers are fully engaged in their learning. Beyond those initial characteristics, we also recognize that curriculum-based professional learning takes the form of multiple types as well as structures. So when we talk about types, we're looking at that initial professional learning that happens around the adoption and the review and selection of materials, then through the launch of those materials, and then that ongoing support for both teachers and leaders. So helping leaders look at those enabling conditions and create those enabling conditions to really maximize their curriculum. And then regardless of the type of professional learning that's being provided, there are multiple structures that can be leveraged. So that's workshops, coaching, collaborative planning, as well as consultation. And so this report, again, is designed to do three things. It is designed to highlight the current data on both the supply and the demand of curriculum-based professional learning in the market. It is designed to highlight its curriculum-based professional learning's impact on both teacher practice and student outcomes. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it is designed to illuminate some of those key insights that we can use and share with decision makers to further, support their strategies and funding in the market. And so we partnered with 5 organizations, the Center for Education Market Dynamics, also known as CMD, Columbia University's Center for Public Research and Leadership, RAND Corporation, the Research Partnership for Professional Learning at Annenberg, also known as Ripple, and the Decision Lab, to annually collect and synthesize and report on these metrics that you see here. So I won't go into these questions, but essentially year over year, we are answering 12 research questions through this report, and they fall into 4 buckets. The first is just like a general set of questions around the usage of high quality instruction materials, right? Without them, curriculum-based professional learning doesn't exist. And so we do a quick, what is the market, what's happening in the market around curriculum use? Then we look at market demand for curriculum-based professional learning, its supply, and then its impact. And so without further ado, I'm going to jump into our findings for the 2024 report. So as I mentioned, first, we're going to look at curriculum usage in the market. And this data, I want to note that we collect this data from CEMD, and it reflects their impact core, which represents historically underserved students that are residing in districts that are either at least 10,000 students large, have a body of at least 10,000 students, or they represent one of the 3 largest districts in their respective states. And so, while the sample size is relatively small, it actually represents over 50% of all students nationwide. So the number of districts is small, but it represents a large section of the student population. So one of the first questions we ask in our report is like, what percentage of districts have selected at least one HQIM in a grade band? So here you'll see it for elementary, middle, and high school, and broken out by math all the way to the left, ELA in the middle, science, the light blue, all the way to the right. And you can see here for math that like there's relative consistency across grade bands in the usage of math high quality instruction materials. And you'll see more variance for ELA and science. A couple things to note, obviously here, the difference between the usage of science curricula and ELA math is significant. That's in large part due to the fact that like the science HQIM are just now emerging into the market. I think you see the largest usage in middle school, and I think that reflects the pilots that have been happening in grades 6 through 8 with Open SciEd over the last couple years before they have developed the full curriculum and rated green on ed reports. So we suspect that, as time goes on and more science HQIM are added into the market, you will see that grow. Math were the first HQIM that were added into the market, and so therefore you see that usage at the highest here. Here we look at like, again, that question of like what districts are demanding high quality instruction materials, and you see this heat map that just shows, again, districts in the impact core that are using HQIM. So I think here we see some concentrations for those of you on today's call who are familiar with CCSSO's IMPD network, which is a group of states that have really prioritized the use of high quality instruction materials and put many incentives in place for districts to adopt. You see those concentrations in states like Texas, Louisiana, and Tennessee, Maryland, Delaware, Rhode Island here on this map, as well as some of your larger states in the country outside of the IMPD network who are also making significant moves to adopt HQIM like California and Florida. And then we just look at which states. Again, we at Rivet work directly with state agencies to help them scale the use of high quality instruction materials because we do believe that state agencies play a big role as a change agent in incentivizing and pointing to quality when it comes to high quality instruction materials and curriculum-based professional learning. So this map shows both states that are prioritizing HQIM as well as those states that are prioritizing curriculum-based professional learning or like standardizing, have adopted standards regarding professional learning. So the ones in the light gray are those states that are not prioritizing HQIM or CBPL in any way. So these are states that are worth noting and focusing on when we look at like, how do we get more and more states to adopt high quality instruction materials? And then on the flip side of that, the states that are in the dark blue and kind of teal color here are those states that have both prioritize HQIM and curriculum-based professional learning. The difference is the dark blue states actually have like curriculum, like state adoption lists in place. So like formalized, to have like formally recognized and defined high quality instruction materials in their states. And so it's nice to know that, like, again, nearly 60% of the states are prioritizing and have a focus on HQIM, which is great because, again, like I said, we feel that state agencies play a major role in accelerating the rate at which HQIM are being used nationally. And so that's kind of like a quick look at HQIM usage, which districts are using it, which states are incentivizing it. And here's kind of a quick summary. So here you'll see a comparison of the usage of high quality instruction materials in the impact core from last year to this year. So you'll see, while not like any major significant changes, you do see progress. Slight progress in ELA, more significant progress in math, and science has remained the same. But overall, we're seeing a 3% increase in the market. And again, I think we ask ourselves, to what extent has the recent legislation that's been passed in states across the country regarding the science of reading that really call for the use of high quality instruction materials for early literacy is playing a role in these increases across the board, as well as, again, more and more states like those in the IMPD network who are incentivizing HQIM usage. Now we're going to jump into the curriculum-based professional learning section of this report. So starting with demand. And when we talk about demand, we are talking about looking at things like RFPs, the contracts that districts are engaging in with PL providers to say, like, what are districts asking for when it comes to curriculum-based professional learning so that they can then provide it, the supply side that we'll get into later, to teachers. So one of the first questions we ask in this report is like, why are education leaders demanding curriculum-based professional learning over, regular professional learning that's not grounded in the curriculum? And according to Rivet's most recent market survey, the 4 top influencers of a district's decision to use curriculum-based PL versus PL that's not grounded in the curriculum, or looking at like, what is the immediate needs of my kids? Do I have like something that I need to address today? And therefore I just need to go with whatever PL I can pull off versus like more thoughtful planning around curriculum-based PL, state or federal mandate. So again, looking at that, like a lot of those legislative and policy levers that are being pulled in states. Many of these laws that are being put in place around science of reading not only are calling for the use of HQIM, but are also requiring teachers to be trained on those materials in addition to being trained on the science of reading. So that's playing a key factor right now. Budget. Money is always a barrier, right? So knowing that bringing in an outside partner sometimes to provide that curriculum-based professional learning, or to like restructure some of your internal professional learning systems to provide curriculum-based professional learning can require more funding. So sometimes a limited budget may result in a district not being able to provide curriculum-based professional learning. And then finally, the scope of topics that need to be covered. So this one is really addressing a lot of those like regulatory mandated trainings that need to happen in states. So like cybersecurity, ethics training, all of those like just basic that are like legislatively mandated trainings. Those types of topics don't dictate the need for curriculum-based professional learning. So like districts are able just to provide that through like an asynchronous webinar or some like quick training. So this is a look at like the barriers of like when that dictate or influence a district's decision for providing curriculum-based PL. And then the other question we ask again is like, what influences their decision? And then when they are ready to provide curriculum-based professional learning, so they've made the decision that it's needed, what are some of those barriers that they face in then actually delivering that curriculum-based PL to teachers? So here you'll see at the top is data from the Decision Labs, Smarter Demand Insights. And then on the bottom is from Rivet's PLPG provider survey. It's an annual survey that we give to the providers that are certified in our professional learning partner guide. While they're flipped, the 2 barriers are the same: money and the time to actually provide teachers with curriculum-based professional learning, whether that's through during the school day or through like professional learning days and workshops. Then we looked at like, what are the types and structures that leaders are demanding through service request? So one of the services that Rivet has is our RFP board. So we curate RFPs related to instructional materials as well as curriculum-based professional learning, and we share those opportunities with providers in the PLPG. And so looking at those RFPs that have been posted in an RFP board over the past year, the most demanded type of curriculum-based professional learning through RFPs is launch training. And the most demanded structure in which curriculum-based PL is happening is workshops. And then we looked at like, how have providers in the PLPG adapted their services? So like, how are they, like the services that they're supplying to the market? It's important that they're nimble and they are responsive to the needs of their clients. That's an expectation we have for them in the PLPG. It's one of the questions we ask them is like, how do you customize your services? So here you see the top 3 reasons that PL providers are customizing their services. One is just to enhance or expand their service offerings. Again, the market is forever changing. It is dynamic for sure. And so it is nice to see that our PL providers in the PLPG are being responsive to that. Some of the things that they noted in the survey in particular is like this science of reading, right? So like many of them are like adjusting some of their, early literacy curriculum trainings to go more in depth to the science of reading to meet some of those legislative requirements in states. The other is flexible time options, being willing to offer virtual trainings versus in person, or offer trainings at like odd hours. Sometimes we see trainings that are happening at like 7 o'clock at night because that's the only time that works for like instructional coaches sometimes. And the final is just like, again, customizing the plan to meet district needs. So our providers, really actually are really in tune to district needs, and they are willing to customize that for the local context. I think it's a common misconception by district leaders that all too often they think that they're always going to be like forced into some cookie cutter PL training or professional learning options. And actually that's not the case. And that's, again, an expectation we have of the providers in the PLPG, that they do take the local goals and context into consideration when designing their PL for districts. So again, these are just kind of how the ways in which the providers in the PLPG are customizing their services that they supply to meet demand. So again, as we look at like a wrap up of this section and looking at like the supply of curriculum-based professional learning overall, some things to note is that, again, curriculum adoptions continue to have a significant impact on the supply of curriculum-based and the demand of curriculum-based professional learning in the market. Sadly, I think, when we look at the factors that are influencing district demand of curriculum-based professional learning, they're less guided by instructional needs and are more logistical considerations like budgets and mandates. And so this is a trend that we would like to see change over time, is that when districts are demanding curriculum-based professional learning, it's less because they feel like they have to. And it's more that they believe that it is what their teachers need the most to be able to like improve their practice and improve student learning in their classrooms. And then finally, again, it's really just like important to note and to see that our providers are really committed to consistently modifying and improving their services to best meet the needs and the demands of education leaders. And so one of our wonderings, so you'll see on the right-hand side, again, is like, to what extent can Rivet, our partners in this guide, or this report, the partners in the our PLPG, and other organizations what can we all be doing to further increase demand in the market so that educators are invested in and believe that curriculum-based professional learning is an important role, an important factor in the skillful implementation of high quality instruction materials. So next we'll look at the supply. So again, we just looked at the demand, like what are district leaders asking for and demanding of PL services and providers. And now we're going to look at like what is actually being provided to teachers and leaders. So the first is, the question is, who is providing the majority of curriculum-based professional learning to teachers? And of no surprise to anyone, that is mostly happening by internal staff, whether that's district staff or school staff. But we'll note this in our wrap up in this section. There has been a significant shift since last year in the percentage of external versus internal professional learning. So the data you see here is like district leaders and school leaders reporting to Rivet through our market research what percentage is internal and external. So there's slight variances here, but mostly aligned. The next question we look at is like, what types of curriculum-based professional learning are being provided? So again, when we talk about types, these are the types that we review for in our professional learning partner guide evaluation process. So there's adoption, launch, ongoing support for teachers, and systems design and leadership support. So according to our PL providers, the most type of PL that they provide is ongoing support for teachers. And this is primarily happening through coaching and collaborative planning, as well as launch. So both of these are, close in their percentages here, but ongoing for teachers is the most widely provided type of PL. Next, we look at the structures. So in which structures are teachers most likely to receive curriculum-based PL? And this is a question that's asked through multiple research studies. The first you'll see is that principals, according to Rand's Ayers Leaders Survey, say that the structure in which they provide the most curriculum-based professional learning through is happening through collaborative planning. According to Rivet's professional learning diagnostic, district leaders also say that collaborative planning is the most widely used structure for CBPL. And then according to our PL providers in the PLPG, they actually say coaching is the most widely used structure for curriculum-based PL, which coincides with what we saw on the last slide, that ongoing support for teachers is their most widely type of PL that they're providing. And so again, you're seeing here job embedded PL, collaborative learning and coaching as the most widely used structures for curriculum-based PL. A data highlight that we wanted to call out here that we think is really important is that according to Rand's Ayers teacher survey, over half of teachers report that they have never received coaching focused on the use of their instructional materials. And, there's a lot of research, and we'll get into that in the impact section, that shows that coaching really is effective in helping teachers. And so the fact that so many teachers are saying they've never been coached on their curriculum is a problem, and one that we need to collectively work to solve. So again, looking at the supply, we would be remiss not to mention the providers that are actually supplying the market with high quality curriculum-based professional learning. And those are the providers that have been vetted by Rivet and are certified in our professional learning partner guide. So you'll see all 50 of those providers here listed on the slide. This is a mix of both publishers of high quality instructional materials as well as professional learning organizations. And then one of the final questions we ask ourselves when it comes to supply of CBPL is, what characteristics of curriculum-based professional learning that we talked about at the top that Rivet defines as like the characteristics of CBPL? Where are providers really strong in providing services aligned to those characteristics, and where is their opportunity for growth? So the data on this slide looks at specifically at like how providers rated on specific indicators in our scoring and evidence guide for the professional learning partner guide application process. So the indicators that our providers globally are really strong in are developing a vision for excellent and equitable instruction. So they're really good at helping districts like create that vision as like the foundational grounding piece for their implementation work. They're really strong in building educators' understanding of HQIM implementation. And I think this is so important. It's not just like, here's how to use a curriculum, go. They're really building that long-term and more in-depth understanding of what does successful implementation look like. Their services are really good at offering active engagement in a variety of formats. So just as we know kids need like different modalities for learning, so do teachers, right? So do educators. And so it's important that the services that they're providing are really meeting those individual needs of teachers. And then finally, like most importantly, it's really helpful to know that their services are specific to HQIM. That, when you look at we always say at Rivet, like in the review process for reviewers, if you pulled out all of the slides that are specifically mention the curriculum, share like a task or prompt or something from the curriculum, if you pulled that out of the deck, would you have anything left? Right? And the answer should be no. That's when you know that training is truly grounded in the curriculum. And so this last indicator reflects that. In terms of the areas of growth, we are seeing, and again, these are the indicators where our providers scored the lowest on. We're seeing here again is their areas for growth for them are being able to prioritize equity and helping to reduce bias. So their services are like really working on this with teachers and helping them to reduce the bias that may come into play in their classrooms. All too often we're seeing, providers maybe leaving leaders out a little bit. The focus often is on teachers and helping teachers to skillfully use the curriculum, but it is so important that leaders too are learning alongside those teachers and that we're equipping them to create those enabling conditions and systems and supports to support like the long-term success of curriculum. Also, the other areas like helping teachers to use those embedded supports in their curriculum to meet the diverse needs of their kids. And then finally, like making sure that the trainings are truly grounded in student learning. So having teachers practice like students, do the actual task of the lesson, and anticipate where kids are going to struggle, where did they as adults struggle, and therefore we know that our kids are going to struggle, and like proactively problem solve for that. And then finally, as we wrap up the supply section, when we talk about supply, it is important that Rivet, has our bar for quality and that we vet providers against it. But also, and maybe equally important, is the fact that just going through the application process for the PLPG and having these providers assess their services against Rivet scoring and evidence guide in of itself is designed to improve the supply of their services. It's a chance for reflection and improvement. And we hear that, we ask that question specifically of our providers at the end of every cycle, like, to what extent did this process help improve your services? So here you see a couple quotes from providers in our most recent provider survey and the last couple cycles. I'll just share one with you. I won't read them all, but one provider said that the PLPG framework was very supportive in helping us examine and design our professional learning. It helped us clarify many of our goals, make the purpose more explicit, and refine the structure of the experiences we offered. It also helped us as we design our support for coaches and instructional leaders. And so you can see here again, this provider is just saying, like, it helped us just like get more concrete and clear on what we need to be doing. And then also it had us like think through like an area where we may be lacking in our services regarding coaches and instructional leaders. So that's the intent behind the PLPG process, not to just like vet and certify providers. So as we wrap up this section, I mentioned this earlier, I think for us, the biggest key takeaway on the supply side of the market is this significant increase in the percentage of PL that is provided externally. It has increased over 20% in the past year. And RAND's data also backs up this like significant increase in the market. This data that you see here is from Rivet's PL market report. But the growth is significant. Our assumptions and, kind of wonderings here is the extent to which ESSER funding is a big contributing factor to this, as well as the just growing demand for high quality instruction materials in the market. But we suspect that the ESSER funding, we've seen, and our PL providers will say, right, like some of our PL providers have grown significantly through COVID because the demand has just been there, because for the first time, money has not been a barrier to providing high quality professional learning to teachers. And so it'll be interesting to see, like, as ESSER funding goes away, if like this percentages will go back down again, or if this trend will continue. And then our final section today is, what is the impact of curriculum-based professional learning in the market? And admittedly, this is the area that we have the least information about to date. This is the place that we are, and organizations like Ripple are really hyper-focused on developing. And so the data that we have here today is, to share for today is, while it's more data than we had last year, it's still limited. But when we asked our PL providers in our annual survey, which structures of curriculum-based PL do they find to be the most impactful? For adoption PL, they said that the most impactful form is consultation. So that just like kind of in-depth conversations and consulting with district leaders or review committees is the most impactful form. For launch of a new curriculum, the most impactful form, they said, is workshops. And then for support for teachers and systems design and leadership support, they said coaching, that one-on-one, making sure like you're helping a teacher meet the needs of her kids or adjust her lesson, and helping that school leader adjust their schedule or create a coaching cycle that works for their school. That one-on-one coaching support is the most impactful forms, according to our PL providers. And then according to RAND's teacher survey for AIRS, teachers report that collaborative learning has the most impactful on both their teaching and student learning, followed by coaching and workshops. So here for the impact section, again, I think both the sets of data that we do have do point to the fact that job embedded curriculum-based professional learning through collaborative planning and coaching is the most impactful form of curriculum-based PL. And I think that while our PL providers are providing this type of PL in larger numbers, on the district side, the curriculum-based professional learning that teachers are receiving from their school or district is usually through less job embedded forms of PL, like workshops. And so I think this is a place where Rivet, is really placing some importance on just like growing and educating the market on the importance of like really creating these structures in schools so that teachers do have at least weekly opportunities to plan with their peers using their curriculum, and at least like monthly get at least one coaching session, right? Where they're getting some feedback from a leader instructional coach or an external coach in their buildings on their practice. And so we're excited to see the evolving work of Ripple and their research studies coming out later this year and over the next couple years that are going to help us and better inform this section of our report and better understand exactly what characteristics and attributes and aspects of curriculum-based professional learning at the end of the day are having the largest impact on teachers and kids. So before I turn it over to some questions for you all today, I just wanted to take a moment to thank our partners. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, we have 5 partners that we have partnered with to answer these research questions annually. Every year, those partners may or may not have data to contribute. So this year we wanted to recognize our contributing data partners, which was the Center for Education Market Dynamics, RAND Corporation, as well as Benenson Strategy Group, which was Rivet's partner in all of the market research that we did that is played a large part in this year's report. So just take a moment to thank these partners in particular this year. And at this point, I will turn it over to questions. You can either drop it in the chat, or if there's some questions in the Q&A that you all want to answer about the report, I will just pause and take a moment. Go ahead and add those in. Or if you want to take yourself off mute, that's fine as well. And just go ahead and answer your question or raise your hand and I can take you off mute. Tracy, I'm going to take you off mute real quick, maybe to kind of give a little bit more context about when you're saying grouping collaborative learning and coaching. Can you say more about when you say people are lumping those together?
Sure. So I think when, at least from a sales perspective, a lot of providers would code something like a lesson study or a module study as coaching because it takes place with a grade level of teachers as opposed to an entire school of teachers. So I'm wondering how this research differentiates between what is collaborative learning and what is coaching, what activities would constitute coaching, given that a lot of providers would say a lesson study is a coaching activity. Does that help?
Yes, that helps. So for Rivet's purposes in our research, coaching is considered one-on-one. So that is or at least maybe even small group where you are observing a lesson, providing direct feedback to a teacher on that specific lesson, or that teacher's coming to you and I'm like, I have a problem. Can we sit down and like problem solve together? That's what we're considering coaching versus the collaborative learning, which is happening either like by grade level, content area, etc. I believe that RAND also distinguishes those two in their AIR study in the same way, or very similar. And so that they are like distinguished in both studies in that way.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Jocelyn. So Jocelyn's question is how curriculum-based professional learning is like different than the initial product training we give teachers. And I think this is a big common misconception. I think that all too often, and this is why we had that slide in the beginning and why Rivet recently released our instructional materials implementation tool, is that all too often education leaders, school and district leaders think of curriculum-based professional learning or curriculum implementation as that initial launch. I purchased the curriculum, I put it in the hands of teachers, we do a 1 or 2 day workshop before the start of the school year, and that's it. And so it's important that like people, that's why Rivet defines curriculum-based professional learning through the types and structures, so that they realize this is an ongoing effort. This is a multi-year process to implement curricula successfully, and that there's this like ongoing professional learning that is needed that's grounded in the curriculum, mostly in the form of job embedded professional learning. So coaching and collaborative planning is essential. And so it does go well beyond that initial just like 1 or 2 day product training that happens at the start of the school year. Samantha, I see you have your hand raised, so let you unmute you. Go ahead. Oh, let's see. Samantha?
Hi,
Yeah.
yes.
Hi.
Sorry about that. My question wasn't fully formed yet. Let me get it into the chat box.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
While Samantha is working on her question, does anybody else have any other questions? Not seeing any more in the Q&A, so we'll just pause a second, give her a second. If others have any burning questions, go ahead and drop them in. While we're waiting, just know that everyone, we will be sending out both a recording of this webinar, and if a member of my team can drop into the chat the link to the report to make sure everybody walks away with a copy of that report today. We will follow up with an email with the actual recording from this webinar, so you have that like voiceover of the data. Let's see, have your questions, Samantha? What do you hope to see professional learning providers collecting for impact data to add more to that area of the report? Yes. So currently, as part of our review process, our third gateway for the PLPG is specific to how do providers collect data on their efficacy and the efficacy of their facilitators and use that data for improvements. And so we currently do not have them submit like specific, they have to like fill out like a form that uses like, they have to like use one client example and provide like data specific to a client. We don't publish that data. That's data that stays anonymous as part of the PLPG application process. But this is data that Ripple is currently working with several of the providers in our PLPG. They are doing studies with them and their district partners to collect this data. And so they have reports that will be coming out again throughout the end of this year, as well as into next year, that, shows, and they've already released some of those. And so like there's a report with leading educators and their work in Chicago public schools, and some other data that reports that Ripple's already released that showed like very like specific impact data. And so as more and more of that data becomes available through Ripple's research, we will also incorporate that into this annual study. And thanks, Claire. Claire has dropped the link to the report in the chat for everyone to be able to download. Okay. All right, I'll pause one more time to see if anyone has any other questions. Otherwise, we thank you all so much for your time today. We hope this data is helpful to you. Again, its intent is to help state education leaders, professional learning organizations, funders, and other education support organizations to help inform their strategies, their service offerings, so that collectively as a group, we are all working towards meeting the needs and the demands of district leaders when it comes to curriculum implementation and curriculum-based professional learning. So we hope this report is helpful to you. If you all have any other questions after you dig into the report or questions about like how to share this report, please reach out to us. Claire, could you also just go ahead and drop your email into the chat? Claire is our director of communications, so reach out to Claire with any questions you have, and she'll be more than happy to answer those to you. We also have a promotional toolkit that we've created that has sample newsletter entries and emails and social media posts. And so if you all would love to share this report more broadly, and Claire can also drop the link to that toolkit in the chat. I'm keeping her busy this morning. Sorry about that, Claire. She can also drop the link to the promo toolkit in here. And we hope that you all will share this report broadly with anyone that you think it could be helpful to, again, to help us better meet the demands and needs of our district's leaders across the country. So again, I thank you so much for your time today. I'll give you all a quick second to grab these links out of the chat. But again, thank you. And we look forward to speaking with all of you and continuing to grow the field of curriculum-based professional learning. Thank you.